I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, but Andrew Kuo does not take days off. Mr. Andrew Kuo, what has got you so excited on this gorgeous Monday afternoon?
Man, I feel alive again. I'm back. It's all coming back. I heard news about maybe Marco Rubio moving to Oklahoma City. I hear maybe rumors of Ralph Nader back in action. 10 o'clock curfew, the undoing. It is an incredible Monday, Ben. How you feeling?
Well, I only base my weeks on the undoing now. So to me, the week begins and ends Sundays at 9. Mm-hmm. I also don't pronounce it the undoing. I pronounce it the
Totally, yes. Checks out.
You know?
Yeah. So what's your hot take on the undoing? Just rolls off the tongue, man.
No, it's a wonderful police procedural / family drama. It's on HBO. It's called the undoing.
I heard Nicole Kidman get some Emmy nominations for the undoing.
Well, we've got NBA news to talk about, but first, the undoing. Are you up to date on the thrilling murder mystery?
Shows like that are my gruel, man. I love shows like that with catchy names such as that, but also like these weird hazy, like, does my husband exist? Does my life exist? You know, like all those weird, like, remember that movie The Hitcher, where a car breaks down and I believe the husband goes to get gas and he just disappears.
Did this have Kurt Russell in it?
It was the remake. So there was a French one where it was more like elegante, where it was kind of a open-ended ending, and the American version had some sort of like gruesome tearing in two of a human being as a crescendo of an ending.
This was not the remake of The Vanishing, right?
I don't think so.
Have you ever seen that film?
No, but that sounds great.
I forget if it's Dutch or Scandinavian, because I have not specifically thought about this movie in a minute. It is one of the most legitimately terrifying films I've ever seen. I'm not going to give any spoilers. Foreign film from Europe, from at least a decade and a half ago, maybe more. The Vanishing. Fucking terrifying. Anyway, but back to the undoing. Here's why I love it. It is so preposterous is one word I'm groping for here. It is, everything about it is unreliable. Every character is a suspect. All the dialogue is senseless. Things can happen in any scene for no reason, but yet nothing actually ever happens. Mm-hmm. Everyone's kind of crying and wandering around.
Well, someone gets murdered. No spoilers, right?
I mean, that's the premise. But that occurs, but you don't even see it. Just in general, it's kind of a soap opera set on the Upper East Side, supposedly in the highest reaches of Manhattan high society. But there's also nothing about New York at all. It's completely unmoored from any real version of New York City. It might as well have been shot in Vancouver with B-roll of a car going over like the FDR. Mm-hmm. There's just nothing that attaches it to New York City, to a real police procedural, which has been mastered by 25, 30 years of cop shows, from NYPD Blue to Law and Order. Like, we know how this works.
To the Utah Jazz 2019 season. Go on.
That as well. And this is so, it's like they're inventing the New York murder procedural in real time with no reference points. I think I said it on Twitter, but the layers of unreliability stack up to be this slippery lasagna. It's carb on carb in some ways. But everything is illogical and goofy. It's mesmerizing.
I think, we had this conversation on this podcast a couple weeks ago about great things that have no sense of humor. This thing is hilarious, and I see it as the sequel, kind of a wink sequel to Eyes Wide Shut, because it's Nicole Kidman's character. There's the idea of like the unconscious with like the hazy kind of recollection or misinterpretation of memory, and there's a kind of scientific aspect to it, not only through an investigation but also she's a psychiatrist or a therapist, and Hugh Grant, who's hilarious in this, is a doctor, and that plays into it. And Tom Cruise's character in Eyes Wide Shut was a doctor, and it has that, to your point, it has that Seinfeld New York City movie lot feel, where Eyes Wide Shut was not shot in New York at all. It was the idea of New York as like kind of like a quick dream, and also in Eyes Wide Shut nothing happens. And that is what the movie's about. And it's kind of, The Undoing has a lot of that crossover.
Characters are introduced and disappear with seemingly like no reason whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, here's a public defender. Okay, they're in a few scenes, and then they just seemingly disappear into thin air. There was no reason for them even to exist. Plot points that are, she's a psychiatrist, as you said. That's no longer mentioned. They fooled around with that for like the first episode, and now it just has nothing to do with the show whatsoever.
But it has everything. Like, they just have to tell us that, and then so we know that moving forward. To revisit that would be worse storytelling, right?
But it doesn't seem to have anything to do with her character at this point whatsoever. You've just already forgotten about it.
The whole premise of, I don't know. We sound like Siskel and Ebert. the whole this is my take. The whole premise of her confusion, the interesting part of it is because it's based off of the starting point of her as a therapist, right? And her maybe connecting dots, but the idea of the subconscious, and she, no spoilers, maybe does things she doesn't quite remember or doesn't mean to do. And I think her being a therapist activates all that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Is like there's no reliability. Mm-hmm. Where this is not even a spoiler thing. Like, you just don't know if Nicole Kidman's grasp of reality is real. You don't know if the filmmakers are lying to you. They withhold pieces of information for seemingly no reason whatsoever. They just don't tell you shit.
Yeah, I like that.
Which does lead to this glorious sense of detachment where they're talking about this murder. There's no reason to understand why a certain character is even a suspect. But like, they haven't explained why, how they even figured out he was a suspect to start pursuing him. There are just gulfs of information. People say, oh, there's overwhelming evidence. They won't tell you what it is. It's remarkable how little information you have. And then it's just Nicole Kidman in these incredible jackets wandering around New York City with red-rimmed eyes. Just a fantastic show. I love it.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of like some David Lynch movies where it's like something happens and then it kind of like spirals out. If I knew more about books and novellas, I feel like I could talk about this more, but I haven't read a book since Dizzy Rascal was popular, so got it in, baby. So I enjoy it quite a bit too, and I'm glad to see. Another thing I was thinking about was I thought my life was going to be like this. Not the murderer part, but not the murder part, but the fancy coat part. Like, I thought I was eventually going to live in the Upper East Side and have like a kid who goes to a nice school, who practices violin, who makes smoothies in the morning. My life is so far from that. It gives me whiplash.
You want a little son that looks like Jack Harlow.
Wait, who's Jack Harlow?
You know, the rapper who made the Tyler Hero song?
Oh my God. I need to revisit some Jack Harlow, apparently.
No, you don't.
That song has like over like 1 million views. Well, when you sent that link to me, I did a quick research. I quickly investigated Jack Harlow, and he has hits, man. Not hits as in bangers, hits as in views.
He's got that one. That one was a huge record.
Yeah, but he's got millions of views on these tubes, man. I thought I was going to be Jack Harlow growing up, man.
You still could. You've got bars.
That's what candy bars.
Oh, speaking of Tyler Hero, I know one of our Cookies basketball run lads is down there giving him style pointers as we speak.
Nice.
Shout out to them. But also, more in the Heat gossip before we get to Miami Heat gossip. No, this is Miami Heat gossip. We can confirm here on Cookies Hoops, your number one source for NBA gossip. In fact, this is confirmed, that Jimmy Butler, a.k.a. Dr. James Naismith Buckets, Sr., was at local watering hole / French restaurant Lucien on Saturday night with Selena Gomez, as well as Dwayne Wade. That's a fact.
It's big facts. Was it papped? Are there photos?
There are photos. I don't think they're public.
Does this mean at the next Cookies Hoops Classic, Lucien is going to submit a team with Selena Gomez running point?
With Selena Gomez, Tyler Hero, Dwayne Wade, Jimmy Butler. The perfect dream team.
Do you think defending champs Last Lap can beat them?
That I don't know. But we get this information because we are Miami Heat day ones. So
Day ones only.
Like that's, to the victors go the spoils.
Well, also, what if it was a Chicago Bull day one or a Cleveland Cavalier day one, narking on their dude, their legend, D Wade?
Or a Sixer day one, or a Timberwolf day one.
Or maybe like a hobbyist photographer from Del Boca Vista. Coming up to get a little... What's the best thing to order at Lucien? What's your favorite thing to eat there?
Steak frites, escargot.
It's tight. Yeah, you turned me on to escargot. So, I've had escargot in my life. And every time we eat at a French restaurant, I always expect you to order it. And I really like it. But it wasn't something I really went to in my life before. Is it the butter?
The escargots themselves, those they're good. It really is about the snally garlic butter with bread to dap it, dollop it up to soak up the snail butter, the insect butter. Are they insects?
I don't think so. What are they?
Pseudopods?
They're close to. Are they close to mollusks?
Yeah, I think they're all pseudopods, right?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Now, from my understanding, that means a fake leg. As a scientist who knows a lot about Latin and bugs, pseudopod means fake leg.
I'm trying to think of an NBA player with a fake leg, and all I can think of is Reggie Miller, and then Lane Bettis dance. My brain is going haywire. There's just too much going on today.
Yeah, are you all right?
I am overwhelmed with delicious portions of gruel. There's a lot going on, man. I'm trying to get my head around the pandemic, the second Trump term. It's
if you want to slow down and get yourself a nice bowl of snails, some nice garlic butter, loaf of bread, and just chill out. I was walking out for coffee earlier, and there was an argument between a couple guys on the street. Not a violent argument or a confrontation, but an argument about Trump's second term. And one guy was trying to bet $1,000 that Trump would stay in office.
Ooh.
And I was like, how do I
get
in on this action?
Excuse me, fellas, but I was
guys, what's the vig?
I would take that bet in a second, man. I was just thinking
He's like $1,000 right now. Let's do it. Trump, second term, $1,000. I'm like,
I was thinking like the people who think Trump has a chance here, like you should just start. I was thinking about this a few weeks ago, like Can you sell them a bridge? Are there beans that they're interested in? Just like go for it. Everyone just go for it. It's called a reverse mortgage. I'm Tom Selleck.
Hey, FanDuel, you want to get a little action going on the Knicks this year?
Okay, so it's like a fantasy. You get to pick whatever players from any team and put them on your squad. The buy-in is $1,000.
Trump tweeting, "I won the election." Like, this is funny. It's funny. I know it's a potential coup and it's a threat to democracy. Yes, for sure. Still funny.
Yeah.
Trump yelling in all caps after losing the election badly.
Yes.
Like demolished on the Electoral College to the exact same degree that he beat Hillary Clinton, and then smoked in the popular vote by, at this point, over 6 million votes, might end up close to 7, 8, something along those lines. And he's like, I won. I won this shit.
I love it.
Like, really, really funny. Absolutely might plunge our nation into a unfathomable civil war. Yeah. But funny.
I don't think so. It's hard for me to tell because I kind of check in for jokes. And, of course, Fox is going all in on this, but it's not really gathering much steam. Or am I just in my weird coastal elite bub?
No, it's not gathering steam. I do think what we've seen from Trump supporters, QAnon, white supremacists, this alliance they've forged in the ashes of Trump's electoral defeat, we're going to see this a lot. Them just rolling into cities, causing havoc. Okay, we're going to get 100 people show up with our pickup trucks, drive around, and hassle people. Like, I'm so excited for 4 years of this horse shit.
I just think it's going to be exhausting. I remember when Hillary lost and Hillary Clinton. I'm on a first name basis with the Clintons, and I think the vibe was immediately after she lost. It's like, we're going to persist, we're going to stick by Hillary Clinton. This was an unjust defeat, and there's been some tomfoolery with Russia and all this stuff. And that energy is really hard when you just lost, right? So these Trump fans have residual energy right now, but this time next year, it just might be a bad look, I think. And he's just getting older, right?
I mean, let's be clear, though. There is a precedent that was set by not the left, but specifically by the hashtag resistance to saying Trump is not our president, that Russia played a role in this election, that there was nefarious cheating. So to say that the Republicans can't voice similar opinions, even if it's bullshit, they're kind of allowed to do this.
Oh, for sure. I absolutely. And there's so Hillary and Bernie Sanders fans out there being like, we wouldn't be in this situation if one of them was up. And
well, let's be clear. I mean, Bernie would have won, baby.
Yeah. Hey, Yang Gang would have West Side Storied this whole thing. But I think, I don't know. There was even chatter when Hillary lost in 2016 that she would run again and make it better. And the same chatter we hear about Trump running again. I'm like, he's going to be 4 years older and he lost. And if you're a Republican, a lifer, let's say Marco Rubio, who is going to now be dishing rocks to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, I think it's hard for you to get behind someone who lost in such a large margin, like you said.
Yeah, look, there are certainly a demented few people, and when I say few, we're talking about many throughout the nation, who are probably under the impression that Trump was cheated. Sure.
It's easy to believe.
But you can't say no one, right? Yeah. But overall, I would say that most people, even the ones out there yelling and protesting and things like that, they're just kind of riding for their dude.
Yeah, it's just,
I don't think they really are like, oh yeah, it was a computer that stole the They know he fucking lost. He got crushed in the popular vote last time. It was a narrow election in a lot of these states last time, and he lost this one. Everyone's like, yeah, that's some horseshit, because they wanted him to win, and they don't want to take the L as well, which is understandable. And again, you can draw pretty easy parallels to hashtag resistance and like MSNBC's total fucking obsession with Russia and Russiagate. Mm-hmm. Like, the behavior is really similar.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And when I say it's easy to believe, I mean, it's a seductive message if that's what you want to hear instead of you lost, right? It was stolen is easy to get on board with.
Yeah.
The refs blew the game. My team didn't lose. The refs were in on the cook the books, whatever.
Look, the Sixers are the back-to-back champions as far as I'm concerned.
The Knicks won 3 back-to-back-to-back championships off of one dunk on a bunch of Bulls.
Won the championship.
I had this lively discussion back in the day, pre-Quar at a bar, where I was with a Kobe Bryant way before, maybe like 4 years ago, before Kobe became a sad idea. And he was like, Kobe Bryant's the best player of all time. Fight me. And I was like, well, if you're talking credentials, there's other players, like there's many other players ahead of him in every category. And he's just like, yeah, but Kobe's just the best. That's just how I feel. And I said, well, then to that point, Jeremy Lin is just the best player of all time because that guy is the best to me. And he's like, well, that doesn't work. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, trying to shoot this moving target is the fun of it, I guess.
Love shooting a moving target. Love it. Let's just, before we continue on, shout out to our Patreon subscribers who receive incredible early access to Cookies merch drops, as well as getting the pod right away. And shout out to our friend Kat Marnell, who has a Patreon of her own called Beauty Shambles. So if you are into beauty and Kat Marnell, who is amazing, it is worth signing up for that.
I'm now into beauty. I wasn't before, but I officially am. No, for real. Kat is not only a friend of the pod, she is our trusted correspondent. And yeah, we signed up in a nanosecond. We slammed that subscription button.
Icon, Kat Marnell. Mm-hmm. Moving along. How are you feeling about the second wave? You ready?
Wavy. I am ready for the second wave, man. I've been thinking about adding a visor to my drip. I'm moving. It's a different kind of daylight savings where instead of making sure I'm tucked into bed at 11, I'm making sure I'm tucked into bed at 10 now.
Yeah, the second wave is it's cruising. It's coasting along, picking up some steam through the Midwest, all that. So in an attempt to head off said storm, your man's Andrew Cuomo,
my dude,
they've changed some of the rules about outdoor dining, socializing. So now the entire city has a 10 p.m. curfew, including outdoor dining and indoor dining, which is a relatively new development as part of, phase 4, whatever it was. How are you feeling about this 10 p.m. thing?
Deflated, but what can we do? We're back to where we started, and I don't think New York is going to get to the levels we were at in March, April, May, for sad reasons, but also for other reasons. Antibodies, however it is, we're still figuring it out. But it's deflating to see. Especially during the holidays, we saw this coming. They warned us about it. They said the holidays would be awful this year, and mental health was a priority. And now that it's here, it's like, it sucks, man. But I'm buoyed by a lot of this Moderna news and these vaccine drops that we're getting from time to time.
That vaccine drip.
Yeah. That's all good. So everything's going according to schedule, but we have to live through it. And it's not unlike living through a Knicks season, but instead of losing games, it's losing people.
The recent news that came out today about the Moderna, which was they are claiming 95% efficiency off the heels of the Pfizer one that said it was 90% effective. It's a good time to announce that the Cookies interns have one that's 97%. So
Wow, how
They've
did
been
they
in the-
get that done in the cage with all that tweeting and all that waiting for less gruel?
They've been in the lab. They're working on infinity effectiveness. That's coming up. But yeah, we just kind of have to hold down the fort. I think there is some light at the end of the tunnel. There's reasons for optimism. It's like, okay, yeah, the next few months might suck, but like, all right, it's okay. Get through it. But the 10 p.m. thing does bug me, only because you've told these restaurants, build these outdoor structures, spend all this money on heat lamps, and then you're saying, okay, you can't have people out there after 10, which means that last call is 9.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense. Why not say, okay, outdoor dining can keep going, outdoor drinking can keep going, but we just have to stop indoor shit. Like, why is your solution to keep indoors going, but let people socialize only until 10 outdoors? I just don't get it.
It's that Miami Heat culture running up the coast, up to New York, where we start having dinner at 4:30 p.m. Del Boca Vista, baby. Yeah, I feel you. I'm really, really worried about the things we love about the city. We've been on the same thing forever. The restaurants, the galleries, the museums, the bars, and taking away another kind of like artery to stay open is almost crippling, because all these places are hanging by a thread, and there is no stimulus plan. Like, we got Coney Barrett in there in warp speed, light speed, whatever he wants to call it, and then like whatever. We might get a stimulus package when Biden becomes president, but we need one tomorrow.
I think if I was running the show, which I should be,
Yeah.
as everyone knows, I think the real solution here is to say we can't do indoor dining unless it's very limited. You know, it has to be super limited. You need ventilation, certain requirements that you could hit potentially to do indoor dining. Okay, all right. Even though I don't love it, just to keep people open who really, really need that. Let people hang outside 24/7 if they want to. Why put restrictions on outdoor dining? It doesn't make sense to me. It also never made sense to say you can do outdoor until 11, but indoor until 12, meaning you are essentially demanding that people go inside. Why not just say indoors, no, outdoors 24/7, it's like Mardi Gras, Bourbon Street, let's go.
It seems, and no solution is perfect, but I'm kind of with you on that. It seems like they're taking an approach to this not unlike the war on drugs, like locking up addicts or people who are holding an X amount of an illegal substance on them. And I think closing establishments down like this does decrease the chance of the spread of this disease, or this, I guess it's a disease, infection rate. And I think it will work, but it's a short-sighted solution, because the source of the problem of our suffering isn't on the level of the way restaurants behave. And I know a lot of the infection rates go up because of our interactions at these places, and when we get a little cocktail or a couple martini twos in us, like, we get looser, and a lot of spreading happens that way. But we're not looking at the right thing.
See, I'm not sure about that. It's certainly possible, right, that you get a couple drinks and then you go inside the restaurant or bar, but that's also happening only when you're allowed to. So that's what I don't get about this policy, is the argument, in fact, once people have a few drinks, then they go hang out indoors. I was walking around the other night, and this is when you have this essentially a 9 o'clock curfew, more or less. There were people throwing house parties everywhere because they have nowhere to go. And that's not something I've seen much of. I walked by at least 4 or 5 apartments where you could hear music playing in groups of people. This seems counterproductive to me. It feels like you're driving people inside who were probably content being outside on the sidewalk with some friends drinking outside. And now they're all indoors. I think this is counterproductive and leads to more situations with spread than say, yeah, we had a couple drinks outside.
I mean, that data is worth checking out. I think it would be faulty, sort of like polling. I don't think people are ready to admit that they did this, so we'll never really know. There is data to say that, like, when people are allowed to eat inside, there's a little bit of a spike. And there was a tiny spike, but New York is still holding it down. What I meant was, the question is, your boy Cuomo has to figure out how to incentivize us to behave a little bit better. And giving us less options isn't quite the way to do it. It has a quick sugar high, if that existed. It has a quick spike, and it's like a K-hole. It goes away. It lasts for 20 minutes, and then you're left wanting more. And I think...
Do you want it more?
I think this has to do with cash. I really do. It has to do with a stimulus plan, and I wondered why the city wasn't giving out grants for people to create these outdoor structures. Like, you should be able to just get $1,000 from the city to do it, but pay these restaurants money so they don't have to stay open.
Look, we know people are going to socialize. They want to.
Of course.
And until there's like a lockdown, you can't stop them from doing it. So we know, based on what happened over the summer in New York City, that outdoor socializing, whether it's having some drinks, whether it's eating, is okay. It's all right. It does not seem to lead to any sort of uptick in COVID cases. And in fact, we saw COVID wither down to very, very, very small amounts while that was going on from June, July, August, September, etc. Taking away that as an option just seems so silly to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but we're maybe taking this, we're getting our feelings in the way, and there's no other way to do this, because we knew this fatigue would happen, and we knew our tolerance for obeying certain general rules would erode. And I think this is another hump. There's been so many of these, but this is going to be tough, and I think we're making it too complicated is what I'm saying. It's like, why are you doing that? What about this time? It's like, we just kind of have to do things like this, and none of it is perfect, because none of it will ever be perfect.
That's true as well. My main thing is just say, cool, if you can keep people in your little outdoor huts and you can have people sitting on the sidewalk, do it until 1 a.m. on the weekends. Cool. Just don't let people inside. To me, that's how you would actually help businesses keep making money while simultaneously protecting your citizens. Saying, well, let's just shut everything down at 10, but if you want to go eat dinner inside, that's cool, just do it early. Like, this doesn't seem to do either thing. It's just kind of a half measure. But anyway, everyone's trying to kick the can until the Cookies intern's 97% vaccine hits the market.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Is a Cookies intern's cage a little too small or too big? Should they have access to the lock and key if they do well? Oh, we'll take that back. These margins are so slim, man.
Well, the one thing we have done well, and I think this encouraged their production in the lab, is that we keep the temperature at -8 Fahrenheit.
Oh, that's nice. For those ice cold takes.
Moving along. Let's get back to the joking. It's time for the KBB.
Let's rock.
I've put this moment off for months. For months. You tried to get this popping off during the COVID hiatus, during the bubble, pre-bubble, and here we are. I've held out till the last possible moment. The NBA draft is on Wednesday. We are now on Monday. Transactions are flying left and right. But it's time for the KBB. Andrew Kuo, let's do it. The KBB.
Every year it's the same shit, man. I love basketball. You hate basketball. We have to talk about this. Finally, Woj bomb. The streets are saying an updated KBB has just been posted on Twitter.
Flex.
Yeah. The official KBB drop.
Are we done?
Woo, we did that. Crushed it. Another perfect pod.
That was great.
No, but every year I understand where your frustration comes from because this is all guessing, right? Even the best guys, if you look back at their old mocks, are just like they had Bam Adebayo in the 20s. You know, it's just like we don't know anything because these kids have never played against James Harden.
The KBB is the Kuo Big Board. Just for those who don't know, you should know this, but just in case, it's the Kuo Big Board. This is his.
Or
here's my question that I need to know.
Ketamine boing boing. What? What's your question?
Ketamine. Is the KBB simply your rankings of players, or is it based on the NBA teams who are picking at those slots?
Well, there's the KM, the K mock, and the KBB, the Kuo Big Board.
Fucking Christ.
Hey, you got to do both because the Knicks are going to nick, man. Anyway, this draft sucks. This draft is not fun to talk about.
Great.
There's no star out there. Maybe LaMelo. I'm just gonna go quickly through the worst players I think to draft, which is Denny Avdia. I've been saying it Avdia. It's Avdia, I think, but he might come through and change it and be like it's pronounced Grandy. Who knows? But someone tried to fight me on that at the table, and I had to I was double guessing myself, man. It's like, is it Grande?
It's Grandy.
It's Grandy.
Never doubt yourself, Kuo.
It's Grandy, man.
I mean, you honestly should doubt yourself constantly. Like, I would encourage you to go and reevaluate most of your takes, in fact. But whoever this guy is that you are now advocating for, you don't like him, and why?
He can't shoot. He's very cool. I mean, he has a basketball genius aspect to him where he's a great passer, so he stays in the lottery. But he can't shoot. Whatever. I've watched so many videos and sizzle reels and breakdowns, and there's all these people talking about, like, you know, Anthony Edwards favors a hand. Some of these guys are lost on pick and roll. Some of these guys have poor lateral movement, can't, shoot off the dribble. All this stuff, true, but I think we're reading too much into it because a lot of these guys are 19, unlike your boy, Obi Toppin, who's like 29 years old.
I've seen some clips of him. He's a good dunker.
Yeah, he's jumpy. He's 22 and reminds me of like whatever you think Blake Griffin was out of college, but he's kind of awesome. He gets really lost on defense. He's number 14 on my KBB. LaMelo Ball obviously is the best player. I think he's going to go number 1 if the Timberwolves don't trade out.
I'm not sure the presentation of the KBB right now is getting the job done.
Okay, what should we do?
Why don't you just start with number 1?
LaMelo.
Let's get to the heaters.
LaMelo Ball.
So why is LaMelo Ball, who is the youngest child or middle child from the Ball cohort?
Is there a 4th Ball?
I think there's only 3 sons, correct? I could be wrong.
They should get the crown treatment, right? Like, this is a long saga of the Balls.
I love the entire Ball family.
The first season would be Big Baller Brand, The Rise and Fall, and then season 3 would be the Big Baller Brand Rising Sun, sort of like the Phoenix Suns. So
what is it about LaMelo Ball that makes you believe he should be the number 1 prospect in this draft?
He's a genius passer. He's a genius playmaker. He manufactures points. He's big. He's tall. He's awesome. He's a wizard. That said, he has trouble shooting. He allegedly, according to the BMM, that he has questionable intentions, and he's kind of like a Ben Simmons type, whatever zoomer. Doesn't really want it enough, but I think he wants it enough. He played in Europe against men,
I saw one scouting report that they claim that has one of the worst motors of anyone they've ever seen.
It's hard to tell, man. I don't believe any of that stuff because players with intense motors are really bad. Like, do you want to be stuck with a Kenneth Faried? Shout out to Kenneth Faried, who's a successful player, but his motor was unstoppable, but he was just lacking. He ran out of talent, right?
I mean, motor is a talent.
Exactly.
We always say.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I watch clips of LaMelo play. Super gifted passer. His jumper is funky. I think he's awesome. I always double down on passing. I think it's one of those skills that feels as if it works exponentially. if you have multiple good passers on your team, I think you can become far greater than the sum of your parts in the way that, say, Golden State having both Klay Thompson and Steph Curry were able to make shooting exponential. And it allows you to play guys like Draymond Green who couldn't shoot, or Iguodala who couldn't shoot, or Bogut or Looney. So having a playmaker like LaMelo really allows you to put guys who don't have that creative ability on the court. And those guys are hard to find. Like extreme creators. There aren't that many.
Except he runs up against the problem we discussed last time, which is his brother has similar skills. And his brother, like, the league is kind of hedged on him a bit. We still love him. I think every team should go find him if he's available. But the league has softened on him, where I've seen people talk about him as a bust instead of like a really great NBA player.
His shot improved a ton. He rebuilt his jump shot. He's still a very good defender. He's an awesome passer. But again, his game has flaws that are unique. He can't finish at all.
Yeah.
And I don't think LaMelo's going to be able to finish either.
And somewhere along the way in the bub, his form changed again and he went cold. And that's the last thing we remember. I think every team should ask if the Pelicans are willing to deal him. But let's move on from the balls. Mm-hmm. Number 2.
I might let you do 3.
It's just the point guards. Killian Hayes, Tyrese Halliburton. Hayes and Halliburton are really similar. But
can you tell me about, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just trying to keep this. I got the listeners in mind. I mean, I'm also very selfish. Who's the most exciting prospect to you? Like, who do you want people to know about and say, Kuo told me about this guy. Kuo was right. The KBB identified this player down the line as someone who's an awesome pro.
There isn't one here except LaMelo. This is a weird draft, man. I think all these guys are going to have long careers, probably. Like Isaac Okoro, Sadiq Bey. Those guys are good. They're going to be good 3-and-D guys, but they're not going to... They're like Danny Greens, you know? If they're lucky. Danny Green. Shout out to Danny Green. But there's no breakout star here. Obi Toppin will have some amazing dunks and get benched because he can't follow a pick and roll on defense. I think Halliburton is so awesome, but he dropped one rank from 2 to 3 in the latest update because his form is wonky, and Killian Hayes just seems like the more fluid player. Both of them are cool passers, but Halliburton can shoot really well, and Hayes can maybe shoot better. Hayes is bigger. Halliburton has that wet noodle. Actually, I take that back. Halliburton has a Jalen Rose vibe to him, where he's like he's an uncooked noodle. He's
al dente?
He's very upright.
Who do you want the Knicks to take?
Any of those 3 guards, but at number 8, which is a fine place to be here, anybody except Obi Toppin.
So you are out on Obi.
Just
I feel
there.
like because he's from Queens.
Oh, maybe we should get him then.
I think he's from Queens.
Capone Noriega.
I mean, CNN.
UBC.
Channel 10. Wah, wah. Wah, wah. Wah, wah. But I think there is emerging sentiment for the Knicks to take him in part because he's local, which reminds me a bit of like the Ron Artest movement, which turned out to be correct because they took your guy, Frederick Weiss, 1 pick ahead of Ron Artest, who turned into Meta World Peace.
So
maybe there is a local bias here to Toppin.
You told me that. I can't find where anybody says that. Where'd you hear that from?
That what?
That Toppin was rumored to be going to the Knicks are interested in Toppin at 8.
Oh, he's from Brooklyn, by the way.
Okay. Oh, okay. So.
But he might not be available anyway, right?
I mean, he might go as high as 5 or just drop straight down. All these guys, man, it's weird. Devin Vassal's really good. He's a 3-and-D guy. Anthony Edwards, I really don't like. I think we're gonna make fun of him as soon as he plays a couple games because he's huge, and they're obviously comparing him to Dwayne Wade because he has that kind of fluidity. But he's got that Wiggins vibe to him. So I think we'll be roasting him as a prom king for years.
Can people follow up with you on Twitter and talk about the KBB?
Always. I'm around. I'm going to climb into that cage with the interns and log on.
the last thing I'm going to ask you before we move on, and I'm sorry, I apologize for this. I just don't know shit about the draft. Like, these names, they mean nothing to me.
No one does, man.
So my question here, this is the last part. So get whatever you got, get it out. What should we be looking for on draft day? Is there anything to like, okay, pay attention to this?
I think a couple teams will reach, and not to segue into our next hot, perfect segment.
No, please do.
I think the draft will be impacted by a lot of trade activity, probably, because a lot of these guys are so different between a Weissman and like whatever you think about a Tyrell Terry or a Weissman versus a Conwu. They're just kind of like different types of tastes, and I think certain teams will have certain favorites, and we might see a couple trades. I think there's a rumor that the Hornets will flip with Minnesota 1 and 3 because they really like James Weissman, who's really nice, but honestly might turn into a player. Like, all these players are very underwhelming.
Incredible.
I mean, unfortunately, but like, okay, so the
I'm
reason
sorry, I like scoffing at these guys and then being super excited about them after they played 1 year in the pros. That's my role here, is to say, who are these losers? And then in about 4 months, say, OG Toppin, I really think he could be like a superstar in this league. So I like being arrogantly dismissive of all of this draft stuff and then abruptly changing course within months.
Who cares about this draft? Okay, Matisse Thybulle shirts available at cookiesoups.com.
That's what I'm saying. Like, all right, enough of these jackasses, anonymous dorks. Get the fuck. Oh, yeah, they're super cool. The future of the NBA. I would start Zaire Smith, yes, absolutely.
Barring a peanut injury. I think this draft is awesome in that it's very fluid. And next year, I don't think any of these players are like top 5 in next year's draft, next year's KBB. But it's going to be fun because all these guys are useful. And I think many contending teams are going to want these guys, and many rebuilding teams maybe will be willing to deal spots. I don't know. We'll see.
Moving along. You know, before we get into today's trades, and there were already a few today and yesterday, because the window for transactions flew open at noon today on Monday. But one thing I was thinking...
Like the doors in my mind.
Much like those, yes. One thing we haven't taken into account is that teams like the Knicks, who are in relegation, but also the Hawks, the Bulls, teams that were not in the bubble, they haven't played in 9 months. There's a unique opportunity for the young guys on those teams to almost have a double offseason in terms of working on skill development, lifting weights, shooting, insane amounts of threes, etc., that younger guys who are on playoff teams aren't going to have. And we think of guys getting better over the course of a year, but they don't. That's not how this works. You get better lifting weights, you get better practicing, you get better watching film. Like, you don't become a better player at the end of the season than at the start by playing, 45 minutes of basketball a week. It's just not how it works. So I'm wondering if there will be a spike in the development of guys who are on teams like the Hawks that we won't see from guys who are on teams that were in the bubble and specifically went further in the postseason because of the abbreviated offseason.
Oh, that's weird. I have not thought about that, and I'm not sure I'm with it, but it makes sense. I mean, maybe there's certain players that are going to come out the gates awesome. Like, will Trae Young be able to play league average defense? Maybe. I don't know. His size is not the problem there. Will he not? Probably. I don't know. So I think good players are probably going to get better.
Yeah, I'm thinking, let's take someone like Jeremy Grant, for example. He came into the league. He was a second-round draft pick. Great athlete. Couldn't shoot at all. It took him 2 off seasons of work to become a decent shooter, but he did. And you figure each of those off seasons are, whatever, let's say 3.5, 4 months. So just by this theory, at least, you might have some young guys who couldn't shoot at all, who've been getting up insane amounts of shots for 8 months. That is the equivalent of 2 off seasons, and might come back dramatically improved at, say, shooting, or have put on that like legendary 15 pounds of muscle that everyone claims to put on, but have actually done it. I just think
or
there
lose
is
that 15 pound of muscle.
I mean, that's the other wrinkle, right?
Yeah.
Is that some of these guys might be really inactive.
And be better for it, like faster or whatever.
Well, I'm not saying better for it. I mean, there might be guys who haven't touched a basketball for the first half of like quarantine.
So I'm weird about this. I think that's good. Where I'm coming from this, from the DeAndre Jordan era of, the hack-a-shack thing. And if he could shoot free throws, he would be a Hall of Famer because he was so good at other things. But that was his one weakness that really hampered him and took him off the court. And he shot thousands of foul shots in practice. Like, he worked so hard on it, and it never got better in the same way Shaq never got better. And people who didn't follow basketball just simply were like, tell him to stop practicing. If the results are staying the same or getting worse, don't do it. Like, what's the sample size? They're like 5 years of 1,000 shots a night. They're like, yeah, he should probably stop shooting. Let's see if not shooting helps him, because it's not helping him by shooting. And so I'm with Allen Iverson on this. I don't necessarily believe in practice to its full extent.
Well, there may be some situations like that where someone like DeAndre Jordan is in his own head, is thinking about it too much, and him just getting the ball and throwing at the rim could help. But in terms of player development, like, no. I mean, just no. Getting your shot form down to muscle memory when you're 19, 20 years old, I mean, that's where the real improvement comes, right? I mean, it is actually lifting weights. It is actually getting stronger. It's putting in the time. And it doesn't happen during the regular season because you don't practice that much. You don't play in games that much.
I don't claim that, though, because, we mentioned Lonzo Ball. It didn't quite work for him in that direct way. Sometimes it does, for sure.
I mean, Westbrook. It worked exactly like that for Lonzo Ball.
But Westbrook,
exactly like that.
But he got, he changed it again, and now it's weird again. It didn't work for Markelle Fultz. It might be working for him now. It's like wherever you want to pick up this story, Westbrook's free throw shooting goes. It's like a roller coaster. LeBron James, even in his career, has been up and down.
We're talking about two different things. You're talking about
muscle
stuff
memory.
You seem to be talking about guys who go from being great foul shooters to losing that ability. Yeah, there are certainly mental components to this. Yeah. But I'm talking specifically about the development of young players, like physically, skill-wise. Like, that's unequivocally tied to off-season work. There's nothing else. It is off-season work.
Yeah, but that work doesn't have to be like lifting weights, right?
Sure.
Because most young players do not succeed. A few of them get better, but most don't get better. And I think the ones that do get better, it's very noisy. They're either good to begin with. They've grown into their bodies. They're like Obi Toppin has probably grown into his adult body. Tyrese Halliburton probably has not.
I think you're really underestimating the amount of time that these guys put in the weight room.
I know you're a YMCA guy and I'm not, so we'll always differ on this. But
I just mean all these guys lift weights. That's why that's why they don't look like the guys from the 90s or 80s. They just look like.
But we don't want Tyrese Halliburton to get stocky.
I mean, they know what they're doing. I'm saying all these guys lift weights. It's like
no. Steph Curry is huge. He's yoked. One of my buddies always says like he could take Manny Pacquiao because he's taller than Manny, and I'm like, Manny would just end your life. It's like, well, I can probably take Steph Curry because I'm actually taller than him. I'm like, you're very tall, but Steph Curry would end your basketball life. Like he's insane. Yeah, he lifts weights nonstop. But I'm a proponent of, not controversially, just like the kind of mental part of it, as opposed and just waiting for your body to like round out and find out what direction it's going in. Because not everybody grows out and fills out like Giannis, and to expect that from a tall guy is hopeful, but sometimes you end up like Porzingis and it presents other problems.
That could be true. I mean, Porzingis adding a bunch of mass with dicey knees could contribute to having those issues. That's true. But I'm just saying, if you look at someone like Lonzo Ball, who rebuilt his jump shot, that's just work. It's not mental, it's work. He went and changed his jumper. He put up jumper after jumper after jumper after jumper. I mean, he has said this. His trainer said this. He went from shooting 30% his rookie year, 33% his second year, almost 38% his last year, until going cold in the bub. Like, that's how you do it. You just have to put up a zillion shots, and your jumper gets better. You can't do it with like your high school form. You know, like, these are professional organizations. They all have shooting coaches. As someone growing up and playing, I will say, not having a shooting coach, you just kind of do what you do. Once you have a shooting coach that tells you how to shoot, there was a huge gulf between the kids I played with who had like legit shooting coaches. They were so much better at shooting than the rest of us because they knew how to do it. It's like having someone teach you how to shoot properly and then putting in that amount of repetitions with guys to rebound the ball, with machines that are counting it. Like, I mean, that's what every organization does. They just have people in the gym shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting.
And I agree with that. There's no lies there. And I think where the interesting thing, I think moving forward, I think I'm anticipating a change to all that with biometric stuff. Just looking at Lonzo Ball, he's not that much better at shooting. He still shot .403 this year. His free throw shooting was .566. Why didn't it get better?
His free throw shooting improved incredibly.
Yeah, but it's still like .566. Like, why wasn't it 700?
It went from .417, dude. He got in so much better solely off of work.
It's true. His field goal went from .406 to .403. Like, why
Stop
wasn't
looking at his field goal percentage. Look at his 3-point and his free throw. That's indicative of the work that he put in. It's not his field goal percentage, because that's getting other shots. He sucks at finishing, as we described. Yeah. But like, he got way better at free throws. He got way better at 3 points because he's worked at it.
So where I agree with what you said is, I think it takes smarts. Like, hiring a shooting coach is the right way to do it. Instead of being like muscle memory, being like, you're shooting it wrong, rethink the way, your mechanics. But that doesn't, of course, that requires repetition, but not incessant repetition where you're like making dumplings in a shop. It's not an arithmetic thing where if I add up 1 + 1 + 1, I get 3. It's kind of like this geometric improvement where I want to multiply my improvement, and that may not reside in just muscle memory. It may reside in the shots you take, the way you approach shooting a free throw, where you shoot. All these factors go in, and that's the exciting part of metrics, right?
Well, I just disagree with the part about I think it's all muscle memory.
But you're a floor slapper, memory. Respect.
No.
You're a glass slapper.
No, I just know how shooting works.
Well, this is what I mean.
It's not a mental thing. It's a physical thing. You have to change your form.
Why didn't Shaq get better at free throws?
Because Shaq is a 7'1" man. This doesn't mean that you necessarily with
so
enormous
there's a ceiling
hands.
For everybody, right? Like, is Lonzo ever going to be a 90% shooter
from the free throw line?
Yeah.
No.
This is what I mean, right? Like,
I don't know what you mean, because people have a certain capacity, and you're trying to max that out.
Yes,
like, that's how it works. The idea that
so repetition
isn't about repetition. It's all repetition, man. It's all repetition.
But if
you don't just get better by shooting, by thinking about it, and then you have that form. You actually have to change your form incrementally, get it right, and then do it over and over and over, especially at this level, because the defense is like, you get tired, the game is so fast, the defenders close out. You have basically very little time to get shots off. That doesn't mean that you can put in a zillion hours of practice and Giannis will be able to shoot threes, because he just doesn't have that same ceiling as Steph Curry.
Like, will Ben Simmons ever be a good three-point shooter?
Probably not, but that's not because he hasn't maxed it out.
Right, so how many changes can you make to max it out? And at that point, if you've maxed it out, if you keep on shooting, you're running against a ceiling, right? So my proposition is, you let that ceiling be the ceiling. And then there's no amount of repetition that goes into it that would raise that ceiling.
No, but you have to get it to that ceiling.
Yeah, and that ceiling is really hard to find, and that's the challenge of scouting, right? This is what the guessing of doing a KBB is. We're all guessing these ceilings, and sometimes we've hit them already. Like, not every player improves. There's many prospects that don't make it quite as we hoped, and they've reached their ceiling. And I'm sure Nikolai Shishkavili practiced his ass off. Repetition, repetition, repetition. And he was a success, but he didn't quite make the NBA.
For sure. None of this runs counter to the idea that, like, you become better at basketball things, like shooting specifically, by doing them an insane amount of times. That doesn't mean you are going to become Steph Curry. It just means you'll be as good as you can get. And that's all you're trying to do with these guys. There are certainly players like Giannis. He works incredibly hard. He shoots and shoots and shoots and shoots. He has no touch. He can't just get touch. The ball comes off his hands like a fucking catapult and lands like a mortar. He's a bricklayer. But you know what? He's a bricklayer who makes 30% of his threes from NBA range, which are far in games. Like, that's like really impressive for a bricklayer.
Dude,
It's, like, that guy couldn't shoot.
For
he still
sure.
can't shoot.
And I think there's a reason why the 10,000 hours thing, I think there's more people, and there's evidence to say the 10,000 hours thing does work. There's proof. There's also proof it doesn't. And I think, if I wanted to make beats or make the undoing 3, and I tried really hard at that, 3 more undoings, doing, like, I would have a level of success there. I think I wouldn't make a feature on HBO starring Nicole Kidman and comedic genius Hugh Grant, but I would get somewhere. I would have made something, and it's like, whoa, I didn't expect that. I sold a script, or I got good at writing, or I learned how to wake up earlier, like real improvements. And so I agree with you there, but
I'm also specifically talking about young guys. Mm-hmm. Dudes who played in high school 2 years ago that did not have a pro level of, like, coaching, of every single shot being cataloged, of the drills that they know work, of having unlimited time in the gym to practice on jumpers. Like, these guys have just not had that. And I'm not necessarily talking about someone who has, like, their own home gym and they come back and they're like, oh, I'm a great 3-point shooter now. It's possible. We see people add to their games, but you see in a pro practice, if you were there, guys like Nerlens Noel and guys like Hassan Whiteside, they shoot threes and they make them.
Oh, Mitchell Robinson. Yeah, we see
exactly.
these every offseason.
Yeah, like, these guys are so good at basketball that sometimes we forget they can do all those things. It's the level that is required at the NBA is just crazy due to the speed of the game and the timing and defense. And, like, do you want Mitchell Robinson taking 5 threes a game? He might make 1.5. It's possible. We've seen it. But to get to that level, he has to be basically making like 70% when he's shooting around in practice. It's just the levels are so difficult to attain.
I like this because you're basically telling me Kevin Knox is going to be good enough to get Paul George to New York.
Well, here's the thing. Kevin Knox is a pretty good example.
I love him.
Because he's not a good basketball player. He's one of the worst.
Statistically, he is one of the worst.
2 years running, one of the worst players in the NBA if you look at, compound metrics, whatever you value them. I mean, he averaged 6 points a game last season and did nothing. But he shot 32%. If Kevin Knox has access to a gym for 9 months, he might come back and be a 38% shooter or a 40% shooter, which suddenly just makes him a better player than he was. That's the guys I'm looking at, the Kevin Knoxes.
I mean, I would not trade Kevin Knox because you drafted him knowing he'd be a project and he was the youngest player in that draft. So you have to be patient with him because that's the thing you bought. You bought You bought a young fledgling basil plant, not a fully realized Obi Toppin of a basil plant.
Anyway, mark my words. Some of these guys, the Kevin Knoxes, are going to come back and be better than you think because they've actually
that's a real heater of a take, man. Some of these kids will get better.
But because they've had 9 months.
I know. But, okay, I agree with that. But what's to say real NBA action? Like Kendrick Nunn. He got that postseason experience. He went to the finals. He got a couple minutes. Isn't that invaluable?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
He's an exact example of someone who will not make a jump because he did not get an offseason.
I mean, we talk about...
He might get better because he's, in practices and still working out and part of a team, etc. But he's not going to have that spike in development that does accompany some of these off seasons that young players have. Like, what's his name? Finney Smith on Dallas. He's a great example. They put him in their system. They just turned him into a shooter. Like, he wasn't one. And now he
Melton, too. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real question to ask a young prospect if they like to play basketball. I think that's real. It's like, I'm starting a podcast. I'm like, well, do you like podcasting? It's like, kind of, but I like the idea of doing it. I'm like, well, it's a slog, not for us because we're just day ones over here. But, I think that's a fair question, and it sounds a little hyperbolic, but which of these kids like basketball? And in these 9 months, which of these young players are obsessed? And I'm not talking about like being a dog and wanting it more, but I won't play video games because I would be obsessed. Not to say that I'd be good at them, but like,
hey kid, you like basketball?
Yeah. I mean, there's roundabout ways of finding out, and according to these GMs, LaMelo Ball maybe not one of those guys,
I'm always a skeptic of the wanting it more, but I do believe that enjoying basketball
is key.
Is kind of key.
Yeah.
Like, do you mind going into the gym at 3 a.m, like Dr. James Smith buckets?
Yeah.
Like, he actually wants to go in, even if it's performative.
Yeah.
He wants to go to the gym. He wants to do stuff. Like, I think those are good attributes. Even if it's not wanting it more, it is motivation. It is effort. It is just hours.
Yeah, and I love to think about this when I sit down to to eat dinner at a restaurant or watch TV and watch politicians. Like, I always ask, in order to save energy, I'm like, what do these people actually care about? What are they telling me? And what do I think they're into? Like, Trump throws so much at us, and I'm like, oh, he's just into business. I just forget it. This is all to perpetuate more money or getting out of debt. That's all he cares about, and his ego. All this other stuff, you're like, I don't believe he cares about this. When you sit down to a restaurant and you look at the menu, I'm like, I don't think they care about French fries. I'm just calling it out there, Or like, ooh, it looks like they care a lot about French fries. We should get the French fries.
I think it applies more to like something along the lines of service. I'm not a service nerd, but that is something you can tell the difference. Oh, this place is slacking with the service. Like, the menus are dirty. They're not clearing the plates fast enough. And those are the kind of things, like, they don't want it enough. They don't have winning restaurant culture.
And it's so interesting you say that, because it's totally framed by different things, right? So if we go to a French restaurant and we sit down and the menus are dirty, I'm like, ooh, okay, we can kind of figure out what they care about. But if you go into a Chinese restaurant and they're like, menus are laminated onto the table with Scotch tape taped down, and they're all dirty, and I'm like, they must care about something different. Like, it's all framed in a different way.
Totally, yes. Yeah. Right. They may not care about service in the traditional sense of, here is your salad fork.
Yeah, right.
But their service might be, you're going to get your food in 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, that's our service. You're going to eat this immediately.
And there's so many different ways to apply this incorrectly in the draft, right? Like, the Knicks do this, and they're like, well, we got another enforcer, fellas. Done. Obi Toppin is our guy. Those elbows, Law and Order is back in the Garden. Or you could look at it through a smart GM's eyes and be like, this kid just really enjoys basketball, and he seems like he really is obsessed with basketball. This is a good thing,
Another good thing. Finally, some transactions happened.
It's good.
The biggest one today was a trade chip that we presumed was going to be flipped in the form of Chris Paul, one of the greatest point guards of all time. In my opinion, the greatest point guard of all time.
Who would be in that? Who's your 10 in your top 5?
I'm not doing that, but I'll say Magic Johnson's a power forward, so he doesn't count.
Mm-hmm. And you hate Nash, so he's not in there.
Yeah, it's just him.
Okay. I was going to say, it's like, it's a tough one. Jason Williams, though.
John Stockton.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. The education reform 5.
No. So Chris Paul is the point god, which is one of his nicknames, along with CP3, which is a terrible nickname.
CP3?
Awful nickname.
Yeah, it's not great.
But anyhow, he was rumored to have been on the trading block. This specific trade, him going to the Phoenix Suns and for a collection of players and a draft pick. The players include Dreamy Ricky Rubio, Drippy Kelly Oubre, guy who was picked in last year's draft, Jerome, along with a first-round pick that's protected.
22, right? No,
yeah, a pretty nice haul for a guy who did not have...
Pretty Instagrammable haul. IG-friendly faces, I would say.
I mean, they are so dreamy.
That's a boy band for sure.
But they didn't get a stud out of it. But they got some guys who they will potentially be able to move again. Someone like Rubio, someone like Oubre. What is Jerome's first name? I know that's his last name.
I don't know.
You were the draft guru.
I am barely here right now, man. I am thinking about getting a drink in before 8 p.m. so I can be in bed by 10.
But, yeah, under the covers by 10. per Andrew Cuomo.
Just listening to orders, man. Just following orders.
No, you have to be asleep. Like, if it takes knocking yourself out with a fistful of pills, do it, because you got to be under the covers. And I want you showered.
Wow.
Well fed, and asleep by 10.
Are you a shower night guy or a shower morning guy?
Gubernatorial decree, bitch. Look, I'm versatile. I'm like Chris Paul. Offense, defense, shower at night, shower in the morning, whatever, man. Mm-hmm. Just run the water and I'll show up.
More showers.
So Chris Paul has been traded to the Phoenix Suns. Before we get into the OKC's trove of draft picks and what they can do with some of these guys they've accumulated, Phoenix Suns are a fairly interesting team now. Not only are they gorgeous, just saucy.
Wait, the Phoenix Suns or the Oklahoma City
I'm
Thunder?
sorry. I misspoke.
I was going to say the Suns, not so much.
I was still thinking of Rubio and Oubre in the Suns uniform.
You got lost in their eyes, man. Have we told you nothing not to think about them?
I retract this. I'm sorry. They're
It's like
not
Lord of the Rings, but
They're
different.
no longer dreamy. But they might be good. And I'll say this. There's the common, I think, take of adding Chris Paul is that he helps other players. That this is going to help DeAndre Ayton, who is their kind of underwhelming third-year center, despite taking weird drugs. And Devin Booker, who's emerged as one of the league's better offensive players. Can score a shit ton. He's efficient. Pretty good playmaker, but now he won't have to do that as much. He had a great season last year.
Kardashian blessing recipient.
Mm-hmm. The Suns did not make the playoffs, but were good in the bubble, which is, I think, led people to believe that they were almost good, which is kind of unclear. I'm not sure they were almost good. But with Chris Paul, my belief is that they will win 48 games, maybe 50 games, because Chris Paul's teams are good. That's it.
Okay,
Chris Paul's teams are good. You put Chris Paul on a team, they become good. You look back year after year. OKC, Houston, obviously he was playing with talented guys in Houston and Los Angeles. You go back to the Hornets. Pencil it in. Like 46 wins, 48 wins, 50 wins. If Chris Paul plays games, your team wins.
I think this is the consensus. As soon as that trade went down, everyone's like, okay, the Suns are in the playoffs. Let's just put them in there. And let's say the Rockets are not in the playoffs. So, like, the West giveth and the West taketh. But, like, Yeah, I love this trade. It creates. I'm happy the Suns are good again. We've been talking about how bad the Suns have been for so long, and a couple ping pong balls go their way, Booker goes their way, and Chris Paul, to all reports, worked with Presti to orchestrate this trade to a team he wanted to be a part of. So, congratulations, Phoenix. You went blue. You turned Trump against Fox, and you got a playoff team.
I'm not sure that they gave up too much here. You know, Ricky Rubio is the same position.
2 years left on that deal, 17 and 17.8.
I think this seems like a fair deal to me. They had to make the money work. Maybe they could have held on to your guy Jerome, whoever he is.
Ty Jerome.
Ty
as
Jerome.
in Ty dollar sign.
I think he was a 24th pick overall, 2019 draft, I believe.
Yeah, he's underwhelming, but a nice player to have.
But I think this was the kind of deal that we expected. We heard a lot about OKC taking on big contracts, and this seems more sensible. Some expiring contracts, they can move again. Some pretty good players. You know, you look at the OKC team right now, you're like, well, you got Rubio, you got Danny Green, you got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, you got Steven Adams. Like, they're still a pretty good team, even while flipping guys and picking up draft picks.
Yeah, Presti knows what he's doing, and I do think even as we record, as our little Patreon listeners are listening, Steven Adams could be on his way out. There's rumors of Adams moving during the season before COVID, and this is just a move for more moves, as you said. I think Rubio and Oubre, who has an expiring $14 million contract, those are desirable pieces, and I love this deal for both. It creates the Suns into it makes them into a story finally again. And Presti's up to something, and I love it. He has the entire draft at his disposal, it feels like.
You know, I see people giving Presti a lot of credit, and I think he deserves credit, but this is kind of the same thing with Hinkie, right? Where they're doing a good job, but when your goals are diametrically opposed to virtually every other team, you have such a huge competitive advantage if your goal is long-term success and accumulating assets. Like, you can do it all day. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have some good players. We're just going to like auction them off and get back picks. Sure, they're good players. People will give you stuff for them. Chris Paul is great. It's Chris Paul. Yeah, you got a nice bunch of players that you can move again. You got a draft pick out of it. It's Chris Paul. Sure. You know, so like Danny Green, you can move him again. You can probably get a late first for Danny Green or a couple seconds at the deadline for an expiring contract because someone will want Danny Green. You can do this when you just don't care about winning. And that's what we talk about when we talk about relegation. OKC is heading for relegation, potentially. They don't have to, but
No,
they
they're
can.
they're not operating that way.
But they can, right?
Yeah.
They can. They can stay competitive. They could use this core right now and maybe compete for an 8th seed with a play-in, compete for a 10th seed. They can be a decent team. These guys aren't bad, but they can keep just playing these guys and flipping them and just do this indefinitely if you don't actually care or make a priority about winning this season. Like, this is when you look at a team like the Knicks and you say, this is what you should have been doing over the last 5 years, is just doing these deals. But of course, OKC had a huge advantage. They're coming off of a team that was really good. They're coming off of a
They
team.
had Chris Paul, who people want.
But, well, they had Paul George. They had
George.
Russell Westbrook. They've had Chris Paul.
Yeah.
So I'm not holding the Knicks to the standard because the Knicks have not had any of these guys except for KP.
Yeah, the Knicks are different. They're under an overpass listening to Urgency Newbout and
Different discussion.
Hopefully, Kat Marnell's new beauty pod will be about black eyeliner, black nail polish, black lipstick, and white face makeup, and top hats.
Yeah, it's a New York thing.
Yeah, QBC, under the Queensbridge. But yeah, I think there has been pushback against Presti as some sort of mastermind because a lot of.
I mean, I saw everyone on Twitter, just like, oh my God, this guy did it again. He's a master. Look at all his manipulation. He's picked up 16 picks. I'm agreeing. I think he's done a good job. But he's also traded off Paul George. He traded off Russell Westbrook. He traded off Chris Paul. These are moves that are supposed to get you shit back.
So I think, and we were talking about this last week and all year, I think the timing is important. And when I think in Presti's house, if you were a fly on the wall, he'd be like, what a disaster, man. Like, I let these superstars slip through my fingers. The objective of creating a team is to acquire superstars, and I've had them, and through one way or another I've been forced to trade them for potentiality. Important stuff, but it's the way people misread what the Knicks should do now. I think, there was a time where the Knicks shouldn't do nothing and just let the lottery balls and draft play out. But now that the games has kept on shifting, it's not the same thing to do. You cannot just decide to do something and go on autopilot. Presti getting these picks is great, but to your point, it's what these superstars should net you. And I would almost say this is a small return for the amount of talent he's had in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I'm not blaming Presti for the current situation that OKC is in, but right, this was a team that under him, to as a testament to his exceptional drafting, had 3 MVP candidates or 3 MVP winners in consecutive years. Mm-hmm. Like, you got 3 MVPs. That's fucking nuts. And then you throw in Ibaka and some other guys who are quality players in that mix. You're like, we moved these guys around. We ended up with Paul George. And what are we doing right now? We're rebuilding. Yeah. We made 1 finals.
And all those players are still in their prime.
1 finals.
Yeah.
And all these MVPs came through our doors. We made 1 finals. Yeah. And right now, I'm trying to slough off talent for draft picks for 3 years from now. It's kind of a bummer.
It is, and it comes with the territory. Billy Bean's whole thing, no Simbin, that was close, is he was trying to maximize these players that he drafted and discovered before the Yankees and Red Sox could buy them. And he knew there was an hourglass. There was a timer on what he could do. Miguel Tejada, Jason Giambi, Hudson went to different the Braves, I think, no Simbin. But I just think that Presti understands the rules of this game. Leon Rose has a different set of challenges. Your boy Rob Pelinka has a different set of challenges. And Presti's challenge is to operate in Oklahoma City.
I don't think he should have any hesitation about making these moves. In some cases, his hand was forced a bit by Paul George, but also the fact that the Clippers made an incredible offer.
Was it incredible? I just want to push back.
They offered a shit ton of picks. They offered you Gallo,
starters,
and SGA. They offered him a lot. They were kind of compelled by Kawhi into giving a Godfather offer that Presti was like, all right, okay, fine, let's do it.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to.
He could have turned it down, but I'm saying the Clippers basically were like, we need you to do this deal.
Yeah,
and he's like, all right, give me some more shit.
Yeah, I agree. I find all these hauls to be underwhelming, and there's no option. Like, you never get equal value for a star. All these rumored package deals for James Harden are in a vacuum not enough, but to your point, are deals that are good enough that get done in the NBA.
So James Harden went from being a long-term part of the Houston future to now being rumored to be changing teams. This is a guy who has been an MVP candidate for 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row. I mean, he is an offensive genius. We've talked a little bit about him going to, say, Philly in the past. Today it was reported that Philly is actually on his list of places that he would like to go. Brooklyn was also mentioned. I don't want to get too much into James Harden stuff because something will probably happen, and then we'll talk about it then. What's your initial response to the rumor of Brooklyn? And the discussion was a combination of guys: Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie,
Jared Allen, everybody. Just throw everybody into it.
Well, what's your take? Did that sound viable to you?
At first, maybe, and then thinking about it more, I'm not sure a bona fide NBA starter is going back to Houston. But it all comes down to what kind of leverage James Harden has on that baked egg casserole in Houston. That brunch treat. What is it's like a pan baked egg.
You're talking about the omelet.
The big omelet. It's in Texas you have big oil and also big omelet. I don't know what kind of leverage he has over frittata, but I think that would be paramount into a deal like we've been hearing about with the Nets. There's not much coming back to Houston. That Houston team is a sorry team with those players.
I don't really look at the Nets offer and find it convincing at all.
No.
That's not to say that Houston doesn't, but personally, like, who's the star there? I think Karis LeVert's a good young player. I think Dinwiddie's pretty good. I don't think he's great.
Fan.
I think he's pretty good. I like them both. I like all these guys. I think Jared Allen's he's a good player.
Is Halfway Crooks going? Yeah, everyone goes. Everyone has to go.
But there is not anyone. I mean, maybe you could make an argument that, say, Karis LeVert is like, at best, could be a borderline all-star. At best.
If he's healthy, yeah, I think his health is the key.
But I also don't think he is an all-star if he's healthy. It's like, it's in play.
I agree.
But yeah, looking at that group of guys, I'm like, you're going to trade James Harden, who can single-handedly turn an offense into a killing machine, and you're not going to get one all-star back?
I know, it's so weird. Or a top 5 pick. Like, what is happening? Like, at least, like...
I just don't buy it as a potential haul. It doesn't work for me. If I'm Houston, you could look at the guys in Philly who are young and all-stars. I would look at Boston. And, I don't love Jaylen Brown as a player. He's pretty good. I like Smart, but his contract, I believe, will be up in a little bit. I'd have to double check that. But I think there are more appealing places to try to trade James Harden if you want to trade him at all.
Yeah, and I think he might just have to smooth things out with the new GM whenever they come. Of course he's going to bellyache now. He is doing Houston a solid by playing basketball in their city. So when his ideal boss and friend and the man he trusted quits his job there, he's going to bellyache like this. This is predictable. He's not going to say, like, I can't wait to see who they bring in. I'm a Houston for life. I'm a Houston day one. He's like, well, let's see, because my dude just left me, and I only have 5 dominant years left to win a championship. I'm looking at my options too. And then
I also do. Sorry to cut you off. I was just looking. He does have a player opt out after 2 seasons, which does make trading him now a bit more of a solution if there are good offers out there. Yeah. Waiting 1 year creates that discussion. But will he stay? If you do it now, teams can kind of put that decision away and say, all right, if we get 2 years, we get 2 years. Like, it's 2 years of James Harden, we might win 2 championships.
Yeah. And if you were a baked egg dish, you would ask Harden what he wants and what GM he prefers. Is there a short list? What does he want to see on the court? Russ is expendable. Everybody. It's James Harden's team. And then when your handle is tried by 12 or East Flatbush Project at Nets Goat on Twitter, you break the news like maybe the Nets could get him. But now it came out, and allegedly James Harden is looking at New Jersey. New Jersey.
Wow.
I'm still in the dirty jers, but
So Harden's 31 right now, which means that
he's young.
He opts out after 2 seasons. He'll be 33. And
still good.
Still good. But what contract do you give him at 33? If you
Max.
give up Okay, but I mean, you give him a max contract of 5 years. You're going to say James Harden until he's 38. That's
Yep,
so
you do
old.
that. I know, but you have to do that because he's going to get that offer from somewhere, right?
I
It's
guess
gonna be
my
his
my
price.
overall point here is that there are some issues about Harden that would discourage a massive offer. You know, a lot of talk about Philly. Maybe they will give up Ben Simmons and say, okay, we just want to try to win a championship over the next 2 years, and we think Embiid and Harden together can do it. But you're also now presenting yourself with that issue 2 years from now. Whereas Ben Simmons has 5 more years going forward. Harden in 2, you have to decide, are we going to give him $45 million a year until he's 38 years old, or he's going to bounce? That's a tough decision to say we are ready to make that call in 2 years, or to say, you know what, maybe let's not even open that door.
Well, like we talked about on the previous pods, I wouldn't do Simmons for Harden. I would almost say Simmons has equal value and is younger. Defensive Player of the Year guy, basketball genius. Harden is tremendous, but I think they're in the top tier of NBA players. Kyrie Irving maybe doesn't fall in that top tier, even though he's the most electrifying offensive guard we've seen in decades. But him going back for Harden in a vacuum, if Harden wasn't forcing a trade, that makes more sense to me. But
I mean, to me, in a vacuum, just all right, we're doing pickup ball for our teams trying to win a title.
YMCA motherfucker.
No, of course you take Harden ahead of Simmons because okay, I can figure out the rest of this roster, right? This guy can just give us an elite offense.
But
we'll sort out the rest.
But if you picked Embiid, would you? If you picked Embiid first and Harden and Simmons were there for you to pick your second player, you'd be like, oh, this is just the best defender in the whole state.
What I'm saying is, I'm talking literal YMCA.
Okay.
We're about to run a game, and I need to pick teams. You're like, all right, I'll take Harden ahead of both of them if I'm just picking teams.
Yeah, Harden's amazing.
But when we're talking about age, we're talking about contracts. You know, Simmons makes $15 million less than him. And then Harden's going to be re-upped until he's, what, are you going to let him walk in 2 years and say that was our window? Our window was Harden, a 2-year window with Harden and Embiid. What if Embiid gets hurt?
Yeah.
Cool. Our window's now 1 year. I don't know. I'm not sure, going to your point, was that I'm not sure Simmons is acceptable to trade for James Harden. It seems like too much. I think you can make the argument that if we have Harden and Embiid, we can win a title. Okay, I get that argument. It's real. But again, you are saying we are willing to basically let Harden walk in 2 years or pay him until he's 38 years old. That's what you're setting up for yourself, and you could just avoid that.
And I also think, I agree, and I also think Daryl Morey has too much of a sense of like theatrics and entertainment to go back to a Harden model. I mean, Harden was such a dominant part of his point of view in Houston for good reasons. I'm curious to think. I'm curious to think. I don't know. What am I saying? I'd be surprised if he went back to an old story, just because he has a flair for the theatrics.
Yeah, we talked about this before. He may be sick of trying to do an offense around James Harden. At the same time, he did take out a full-page ad, which may have been like, by the way,
True. I mean,
my man, I'm gonna go somewhere else, and
I'm tired of winning the lotto. No more winning lottos for me.
you know, James, I'm gonna take out this ad about how much I love you right before taking a Philadelphia job.
I mean, holy shit. If either of these two teams, the Nets or the Sixers, can keep their two top players and add James Harden, I don't see it. But if they can get a third sucker team in there, the New York Knicks, and make this happen, incredible.
Yeah, I don't see how Philly can, but
I don't
stranger things have happened. Looking at
And Morey, stranger things always happen to Morey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at that group that they could assemble from, and you're like, okay, even if it was Tobias or Horford and all the young guys and all the picks, it does not add up to being the kind of haul you'd want from trading James Harden.
I agree. There has to be a third team in there. If this goes down, a part of it will probably blindside us, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe Houston loves Zaire Smith and Matisse Thybulle, just for the sake of argument. Maybe like, no, we fuck with those guys heavy. And we'll take Tobias. We think he's pretty good. We can probably juice his stats and get him to an all-star team. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll flip him. Good guy. Got to pay somebody. Again, I'm totally just fictionalizing this.
Yep.
It's possible. It's possible.
For sure. I agree. Future picks, a third team. Maybe there's a DeMar DeRozan in there somewhere. He's just...
Yeah, I don't think Philly has enough to do it without Simmons, and I'm not sure I'd give up Simmons. Giving up Embiid is also daunting, but out of those two, you know, he's got less years left in his contract. He has had more injury issues prior to this offseason. Like, I don't know.
I wouldn't... Harden is a better player than Embiid for sure, and those things are true about Embiid. I just wouldn't do it. You're giving up too much for a player that's asking out. I think Embiid is a little too much.
That's kind of where I'm at too. I think either of them is too much. Simmons to me probably has more value than Embiid.
Yeah.
Because he has been healthier and he has 2 more years on his contract.
Mm-hmm. And this is a copycat league, so we just saw CP3 go for a bunch of valuable players who are on reasonable contracts and some assets. I think that maybe will set the tone if Harden gets moved. And I think Harden commands more in return, but it may not include like an automatic all-star.
I think the trade partner that I find interesting, honestly find discussing fake trades so boring.
Oh, I love it. Come on, man. You hate everything about basketball. I decided you hate the draft. You hate John Stockton. Go on.
Yeah, I find it so tiring. Fake trades. But Minnesota would be a cool trade partner. Former Maury underling, disciple in Rosas running the organization. Harden and Cat together. I'm not sure how this team figures out how to defend. But 2 of the greatest offensive weapons from the backcourt and front court position that we've ever seen. What if you said, we'll give you...
the top pick?
Top pick.
Is that too much?
No, the top pick and Russell and Okogie.
I know. Is that too much for Harden, who may be orchestrating this trade? Like, is he going to be happy in Houston? How much leverage does he have?
I don't know. I have this weird thing where... players seem to get blamed for this era of player empowerment where it's all just kind of cowardice by ownership. You know, owners wanted shorter contracts. They're the ones who said, we're going to max out how much you can make. So therefore, your salary is going to be the same virtually anywhere. So like, you can't just outbid someone for a superstar because they get the same money no matter where they go if they leave. So all of a sudden, it prioritizes markets. It prioritizes winning. And all of a sudden, dudes are out there creating dream teams because the money's the same. I might as well go play with Durant and Kyrie in New York. I'll make more money for my sneaker company. We'll probably win a championship. Yeah, fuck yeah. I'll do that. Houston can't just say, yeah, but what if we pay you $70 million a year, bro? Oh, okay, I'll stay then. That's good.
And I love this. I mean, I think the owners kind of miscalculated, mistimed their jump, and the players do have a kind of advantage. We first saw it when Chris Paul orchestrated his trade to the Lakers. Be like, well, what if I just take less money? It's like, no, you can't do that. This is your market value. It's like, no, I decide what my market value is, and that takes its form in a different way with Harden. But if you're Minnesota, do you have to give up a number 1 overall pick for Harden at this point?
Hell yeah.
I think so too in a vacuum. But
for sure.
But what if Harden's like, I'm just not going to play, but I don't want to go to Minnesota either. So it's just like, it's kind of what whatever Harden's leverage is, because he has not mentioned any other team that we know of other than the 2 East teams.
But that's kind of where I'm saying is like, I feel like teams use players' obvious preferences for playing in a big market, playing for a good team, trying to win a title, uniting with other stars, and say, oh, we had to trade him. We couldn't do it. We're not, our hands are tied. It's like this victimization of owners, and players seem to be inflicting this upon teams. It's like, well, you're the one who signed them to a contract. You're the one who got 9 years of Anthony Davis because of a ping pong ball. And Anthony Davis says, you know what, I kind of want to go somewhere else. And he's the bad guy? Like, fuck off.
Although, to Houston's credit, I have not heard anybody support that scrambled egg dish. Like,
no, I agree.
Everyone's kind of on Harden's side, being like, oh, Morey left. This makes sense. It's like, oh, no, Houston, we're cooked, right? Because Harden wants to leave. I think there's...
I just mean players are a handy scapegoat.
Yeah.
For organizations to say, we don't want to pay somebody. You know, we can't win. Oh, he wanted out. He was disloyal. Oh, Porzingis didn't agree with our plan going forward, so we had to trade him. And people were like, boo, hiss. He didn't want to be here.
Oh,
well,
no one took the Knicks management side on that.
So many did. It was crazy how many people turned against Porzingis immediately.
But that was fake stuff. I mean, real, like, the fans that immediately see him dunking and be like, oh, the Knicks, but then see him go down and be like, the Knicks did the right thing. You know, like,
I would say the average Knicks fan did not like the trade, but I think was at least swayed by the Knicks propaganda that, like, Porzingis didn't want to be here. He wanted to be traded. People really respond to that. Didn't want to be here. Oh my God, then fuck him. Fuck him if he doesn't want to be here. Unbelievable.
I mean, to fast forward to 2020, I've been reading a little bit of Harden hate. It's just like, well, can he coexist with any of these great players? Like, oh, him and Kyrie, man, they're never gonna make the finals. And I'm like, oh, I feel like we're 3 years behind everything. There's a portion of NBA Twitter that's 3 years behind, being like, the Knicks should not get Russell Westbrook. I'm like, oh, they should absolutely get Russell Westbrook. It's like, no, he's inefficient. I'm like, oh, yeah, we were done with that 3 years ago, right?
Well, that's how I regard the Knicks offseason a bit. I think the average Knicks fan has smartened up to sort of believing in, like, what Brooklyn did or what Philly did.
Yeah.
You know, okay. We're fine with no veterans. We're fine playing the young guys. Keep your draft picks. Okay, we got it. That's the plan going forward.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not, though. Terrain has shifted.
Oh, yeah.
For one, I don't think people talk enough about how unreliable the draft is at this point due to the smoothing of the odds. It made a big difference. Golden State tanked their ass off, and they got the number 2 pick. Knicks were lousy. It's like 8th pick. You're like,
Yeah. But you'll take that. You know, I disagree with you on that. You'll still take those odds.
What I'm saying is, if you look at the average talent dispersal of a draft, it's a very sharp decline, right? Like, the superstars really do go like 1, 2, 3. You can get a superstar anywhere; they pop up. You can get a Giannis, Gobert,
Booker,
whoever.
Mitchell, Gobert, Draymond
for sure.
Green. Yeah.
No, there are many examples of them, right? But if you look at, like, ultimately the contributions of a player, you've seen these same charts, and you look at the dispersal over the last 20 years, it's steep. It's like first few picks, and then it's like, and just like slumps way off. When that average value declines and you're a bad team, it does make rebuilding through the draft so much luck. Like, oh, you're the Grizzlies. Oh, you ended up getting Doncic. You ended up getting Ja. Knicks, sorry, you got RJ. You're like, we got the 3rd pick. We should have gotten a star, but we didn't. And then now you're back at the 8th pick. It really does make the sort of rebuild through the draft on an annual basis. It makes it a lot more challenging now than even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with some of that for sure. I think the Knicks were right there. They could have gotten Ja, maybe. They did the right thing by losing all those games. I think my casual brain would say like there is a lot of controversy around Lonzo and Fultz and even Simmons, even though I love Simmons. You know, a casual mindset would be like, well, like, are these the stars? I mean, I really want Devin Booker. Like, is DeAndre Ayton that much better than Jaren Jackson Jr.? And he went number one. So I think the draft is turning out how the NBA wanted. And player development has gone a certain way. I think it has to do with personnel and bias and all that stuff, whatever. But I think where I really agree with you with the Knicks stuff is like, if you're not obsessed with something, then you go to ideas that work. And you know, I don't think the Knicks front office is obsessed with basketball because of the moves they make. I think they're into making money and business and creating entertainment, and that's huge too. You know, Sam Hinkie talked about that in his interview with Pablo. But I think where my Knicks friends maybe, I'm trying to figure out where they're coming from because they do not want these stars. They do not want Paul George, Russell Westbrook, or any of these kind of spent ideas that we've seen through the years. We've seen them on all-star teams. We've seen them in finals. We've seen Paul George fail on a big stage. But I'm like, well, the terrain has shifted to your point where if these guys are available for some stuff, get them immediately.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not arguing that you can't get talent out of the draft. Sure, of course. No doubt. I'm mostly saying that when you look at the Lakers model from a couple of years ago, they sucked every year and they picked in the top 4 every single season, every year. And that's how they got Russell and they got Ball and they got Ingram. They got all these guys in the top 3. I think they were, all those guys were like number 2, right?
Ingram was 2, Ball was 2, and yeah, was D'Lo 2 too? A
Yeah.
bunch of twos over day twos over here.
But that's what I'm saying, right? Like, the Knicks can go and just be shitty year in and year out, and you're not going to get the number 2 pick 3 years in a row. Like,
Or you might, you know, like we don't know. You could, right?
the point is, it's unlikely.
Yeah,
That's all I'm saying. It's unlikely. So to follow the Lakers model of getting the second best player in the draft 3 years consecutively, you just can't follow that model because that's not a model.
I don't know. It's a bad model, but it's a viable model.
It's not a viable model because it's
why
not
not?
set in stone. You can't sit here and
but
say we're going
models
to get
aren't 100%, right? I mean, models all have degrees of error built in.
What I'm saying is, if you went and you ran the new smooth odds with what the Lakers records were those years and did like a average pick now, it would not be average 2-2-2. Back then, the average on a team that was as bad as the Lakers, probably average would have been like, let's say 3.5. It might now be 6. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, getting a jackpot.
I'm saying the math has changed in a way that makes that model even more difficult to replicate, even though it was kind of hard to begin with.
And still favors losing teams. I still believe in what the Knicks, if they cannot get Westbrook for a reasonable price, like they should skip him. It's okay. You know, I think they should regroup and do what they've done in the last 4 years and maybe let a lot of these rookie contracts expire and let them go off. You shot and you missed. But I think that what will happen to the Knicks will happen fast. It'll either go downhill very fast or it could be nice really fast. Westbrook is not Paul Millsap. He is not the traditional kind of player the Knicks will get. He's still a star. He's still very good. He's not perfect by any means, but he's awesome.
I like Westbrook for the Knicks for an entertainment standpoint.
Oh, he's gonna be fun.
I believe that the Knicks model, what they're trying to do, you don't have to do that right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely
you
not.
don't have to say we're just gonna suck until we get good guys in the draft. Like there might have to be other parts of this. You have to do the parts like finding the Dinwiddies and the Covingtons, and the Knicks have generally not done that. They were able to find Mitch in the second round, but they have not done the work of trading for young guys who are under, team control and seeing if they can become good players. They just have not done the rest of it.
Well, they
sucked.
tried with Hazonia and Moody Eye and immediately bailed when those didn't work, right?
And they didn't really try because those guys...
Noah Vonleh.
Yeah, they didn't give him a chance. They didn't keep doing it.
Yeah, they got tired of it, which is my fear.
Yeah.
That Leon Rose might hear from your boy Dolan in a blues song, maybe hidden in a blues lyric, that he's just like, I'm tired of doing, it has not produced any success for us. I'm done with it. It's like, well, that's not the point.
Right? It's like, you've been bad. You've had every opportunity to give cast-offs, borderline players chances and get them under great contracts. Mm-hmm. Who have you found? Like, oh, no one. We got Mitch, who we drafted, was a good pick. Who else? Nobody.
Nobody. I mean, yeah, RJ is get something for him. I mean, you got to wait on Knox and RJ, but it doesn't look good. And there is some chatter that World Wide West and your boy Leon Rose are the Kentucky Whispers, but now that CP3 has gone to Phoenix, I mean, that outlandish dream is not coming to fruition of Cat and Booker in New York since never, right? You get Kevin Knox, Kentucky legend, but I don't know.
I sound so cliche saying it, but the Knicks didn't do the work. They were bad. They said, we'll be patient. We'll have our young guys. We'll keep our picks. We won't go and do anything crazy, but we're going to dedicate our resources to bring in $60 million of power forwards and face punchers so we can be respectable. We'll try to be better. Maybe we'll make the playoffs, maybe not. People won't disrespect us on the garden floor, and Dolan will be happy to see that, a Morai will bounce a basketball off Justin Anderson's dome piece. Sure, we'll do all that stuff. But they didn't do the little things. They didn't go and work hard to cycle through players and end up with guys on contracts that you could then later package together. That was the thing about the Joe Harrises and the Dinwiddies. But they got a pick for Morai. And again, that was like kind of the only thing they did. But
that's work, right? I mean, they got a 27th.
Well, they got really lucky. Well.
They got lucky, but also they might use that to flip to get, I don't know, to move up one spot. I'm saying that was good. Yeah.
That was good. That worked out for them. At the same time, that would not have worked out if he hadn't shot like 45% from three. He was just on fire at more than any other time in his entire human life.
Well, they gave him the ball. They gave him the highest usage, right? So that was something I enjoyed because they did the Hinkie Mori thing. We're like, we're going to manufacture value and flip them. I'm like, ho!
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm just saying he happened to just also be completely on fire.
Yeah. And that was a good deal for the Clippers, too. I don't know.
Yeah, look, that was fine. I'm more saying that they just didn't do the little stuff. I just find it's tough to say we're going to dedicate ourselves to year after year being bad, and the draft is going to be our solution.
Yeah. While
not doing the other things that rebuilding teams and teams in relegation are supposed to do. I don't know. I feel like they're kind of over that. Entire idea as well. It seems like, I don't know. We'll see.
The GMs are trying to do that Chopped thing, where they're trying to make you like a pizza burrito in a rainstorm. It's like, I can make a ziti taco in my sleep, except I have to do it with no water and my left hand tied behind my back. It's like, this degree of difficulty is different, Imagine if you were like, hey, I found this guy Lou Dort. I think we should sign him. And Dolan's like, never heard of him. Fuck it. You're not doing it. It's like,
yes. I think that's the best possible metaphor for this. That they are trying to do something hard and relying on the yeasty bread to rise into a delicious crust. And then someone's like, toppings? You're like, nah. Well, what about the sauce? We're going to make a pizza out of this bread.
Scott Perry's good at his job. I'm sure he's fine at his job,
Maybe.
Who knows? He's well respected,
Is he?
Yeah. That's how he got the job. That's the only reason Knicks hire anybody, right? Like Leon Rose is well respected by players, right? Dolan is a gangster. He's like Trump. He likes respect and money.
Face punchers.
And face punchers.
So, can we sign some Xavier McDaniels right away, sir?
is Clarence Weatherspoon practicing? Is he still in shape?
You know what? We're going to have to drop an emergency pod this week, aren't we?
Hopefully, right? Like, more chaos.
More chaos. Chaos 2.
More Boing.
Boing, the perfect pod.
Cookies.
Cookies.